Hey, happy Friday! I am so excited that it's Friday. I feel like I want to get outside and enjoy the weather this weekend. I'm so happy to be here today for this conversation on David Caruso Live. And trust me, hey Heather, good to see you. Trust me, those of you watching, you are going to want to like and share, start a watch party, whatever it takes to spread this conversation. These two amazing women are going to be so inspiring, so insightful, and just good peeps to spend our this next hour with on Friday. The fabulous Vivian King and equally fabulous Rayna Andrews are joining me in just a minute so that we can talk about their books, have a conversation with the authors, things going on in their lives and everything else that they're a part of. And let me tell you, it is impressive and exciting. So I can't wait for that. Hey, Cindy, Adam's watching too. So exciting that our friends are gathering to enjoy this time with us. And hey, guess what? I've got some happy news. I just got in my inbox an email from the Pfister Hotel and da da da, they are opening on June 8th, the Pfister Hotel. So that is great news, one of my favorite places. So I cannot wait to have a little staycation in one of my favorite rooms at the Pfister and start enjoying the Marcus hospitality once again. So check it out, June 8th. We're so excited. Hey, Michelle, good to see you. So good to see you. I thought we would start today a little bit different. I'm going to bring both of my guests, Vivian and Rayna, into the broadcast because we want to talk about some current events and important topics that all of us are thinking about and hearing about. So I am going to welcome them both into the broadcast now. First, Vivian is on her way. Vivian,
Hey, how are
happy
you?
Friday. I'm so good. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Fridays are always good, even when you're sheltering at home. It's the end of a work week. And I don't know about you, but working at home seems to be a lot more crazy than going to a physical building. Do you find
It,
that as well?
I do. It's definitely different. It is for sure different. But I was saying to you earlier, I need to get myself a throne like you have. That makes work a little more fun.
And it's so cushy. It's got a nice, pillow here. So it's great.
That's so
It's
cool.
computer, sometimes I could like fall asleep too.
That's awesome. Let's bring in our friend Rayna. She's so great, and we're excited to have her with us. A trio. What do you call it? It's like a dynamic duo, but like I don't even know what you call a trio like this.
Tremendous trio. What about that?
Yes.
That. I like
Rayna, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. What a fantastic treat to the end of my week just to be among friends and to just have a little fun, right?
That
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this all week. So thank you both so much. And I thought we would start our conversation today, like I said, a little bit different, but there's lots of news to talk about. And I know that both of you are insightful and involved people. So I thought let's have a little conversation about some of these current events. And one of them that to me, of course, is super interesting. I love dining out and going out. So this has been one of the hardest challenges for me. But as we know, yesterday, Thursday, Mayor Tom Baird announced that all City of Milwaukee bars and restaurants will be free to open for dine-in service beginning today, like right now, 6 minutes ago at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So indoor service will be limited to 25% capacity.
Hmm.
How have you guys been dealing not having your favorite dining places? And are you thinking you might be going out soon?
Well, I would say as a vegan, as a plant-based vegan, a lot of the restaurants that I frequent, like Celesta, Beans and Barley, have been open this entire time. And actually, I'm enjoying this curbside, not having to go to the deli and order it, to order in advance and just doing curbside. Although the restaurants are opening, I'd probably still do curbside because although the rest of the country has decided to open, I'm still going to be very cautious, especially with a 2-year-old.
Right, Vivian?
absolutely. I have enjoyed curbside as well. In fact, I went to uh, Hotel Madrid the other day, and so I've been to Coaches. I have even, I like Corner Bakery. If you, if I mean,
Yes.
I just drive through. They have their masks on and gloves, and I'm kind of with Raina. I know too many people who just have either gotten sick or have lost their lives, and I just want to kind of ease into this. And even though I was protesting the other day, but we were social distancing protesting,
Right.
so but I don't know if I want to get right into the fire right away. I've
Yeah.
kind of quiet time at home actually.
Yeah, the quiet time has been nice. I agree. It's interesting because, what you've said pretty much goes along with what a lot of people have been responding in terms of that announcement. This is interesting. I thought this is something that I read this morning from one of the restaurant operators. From a restaurant's point of view, there was no warning and absolutely no communication on reopening, let alone no guidelines besides operating at a 25% capacity. So I think some of the operators, especially small restaurants, are really having a trouble with this. And this one, this comment, I'd love to get your feedback after I read it. This is another restaurant operator. My spots won't be used as pawns to draw dissenters away from the protest. An 18-hour notice with no prior discussion or planning is a clear indication that irresponsible politicking is at play. And I did not think of it that way personally, but reading that this morning was interesting to hear a feedback about that. And quite honestly, there really are a lot of places that even though they aren't opening. Do you think there's any politicking going on, Vivian?
Of course you me.
I mean,
I
behind my face, I'm like, ooh, we're good.
I cannot speculate about that.
Yeah,
But it just goes to show that we're in a very strange time in this country. And there are so many different perspectives and thoughts and maybe conspiracy theories. I don't even want to go into some of the conspiracy theories I've seen, on Facebook. It's just been really, really crazy. So, I just think that people need to search and research on their own. They need to listen to the trusted sources that they believe and trust, and make up their own mind. Just like Raina and I are going to support our favorite restaurants from a distance because we
right.
have this far. We're going to do that at this time, and just kind of wait for the dust to settle, I think, before we kind of venture out. And I don't even have a little kid like Raina does. So,
Yeah.
I'm really, really careful as well if I had a child.
Yeah, and Reina, I don't know if you agree, but one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about too is, I definitely agree with what the two of you are pretty much congruently saying. But for me and talking to a lot of restaurant owners, I'm the same way, and I really think we all just have to let each other do what we feel is best for our situation, our families, our certain health issues that some people might have, and let people be okay with each other making our own decisions, and especially respecting restaurant operators for making their own decisions, and not putting people in a place of judgment. Is that kind of what you're thinking too, Reina?
So yes, how I put it is I agree with Vivian, and I don't want to speculate. However, knowing that you just had Tandem on and Caitlin, I know that
Hmm.
there are a number of restaurants that are experiencing extreme hardships right now and have had to lay off a lot of people. And so to all of a sudden now the Blues say that we're going to let you reopen and at 25% capacity, even with 25% capacity, you have to hire wait staff. You have to hire cooks to
Right.
actually adhere to the demand. And so I feel like it's really unthoughtful if the article that you read is factual and that's exactly what's happening. I would think that we would wanted more time for restaurants to really take advantage of this opportunity to build capacity to gear up for the families who do decide to come in and dine into restaurants. I
Right.
want to speculate that this is political and this is to draw attention away from the protests. I do think it's convenient. Um,
Right.
but yeah, that's my point of view. I feel for the restaurants that are missing this opportunity. And I also I do think it will have a direct impact from the message that's trying to be shared through these protests.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get to the protests in a second too, but those are all really, really good points. And as you said yesterday on DC Live, some of the restaurant operators, Caitlin especially, and Gregory, they both said that one, people need guidance, they need help, they need direction, they need support, and they need time to ramp up and to make sure things are done properly in a safe way, and so they can take care of their employees too. So the onboarding is a whole nother story. This is something interesting too, just from on Milwaukee, an article related to what we just talked about for the restaurants. And for me, this is interesting news. But here is according to WISN 12, in addition to bars and restaurants, the new revised order will allow public and private events to 50% capacity with a maximum of 250 people, with social distancing practices and masks still encouraged. Now, this is not as straightforward as it sounds, which is part of the problem. But, it's out there that besides restaurants, up to 250 people, for public and private events. Any initial thoughts? To me, I was kind of shocked by that. Vivian, is that surprising to you, do you think?
It is surprising to go from kind of 0 to 250, if you will. Um, I'm planning an event for September, and I'm like hoping and praying that kind of the dust settles by then so that we can have, our event in September. But then looking at Summerfest canceling,
Right,
they were in September, but of course they have way more people than we are thinking of having.
right,
But I think there does need to be some kind of set of guidelines for that sort of for decision,
right,
because people, like me and Raina, we're like, I don't know if we're going out to sit and dine in our restaurants,
Yeah.
and so I don't know that I would go right now to an event that was 250 people. you know, there would have to be some serious guidelines for me to say, okay, that sounds safe.
yeah.
So,
And I
yeah,
think that's how most people are feeling. And I think it's interesting too, the surveying that's going on. I've even recommended to some clients that we do some surveying because, you really need to find out what your customers, your guests, people that are connected to your organization or place of business are comfortable with and feeling, and really use that as part of the guide. To say that, okay, it's time to open and go for it, that's going to be trouble for some people. But just like the restaurants, even for private and public events, the people running them are still going to make their own, guidelines, restrictions, parameters, and we're going to have to see. We're
So,
going to have to see.
David,
I
this
mean,
is so concerning because even when COVID was full force and it was required that we have a mandatory social distancing and wearing your mask, people treat it like it was a request and they really didn't follow suit. So now that you're letting people self-govern themselves in a place of 250, where even now I see people having these backyard barbecues, hugging, embracing, like COVID-19 has never happened. And because America decided, you know what, social distancing and being on lockdown is over. I'm tired of it. It is over. Because someone decided it was over doesn't mean that it's over. As a matter
Right.
of fact, I was just a part of a civic response group where they reported last Friday the highest numbers of positive COVID-19 tests. And so it's far from over. I mean, because we have moved to a space of normality doesn't mean that we still shouldn't practice. And I'm telling you, a lot of people are not practicing wearing their masks or social distancing, which is a big concern for me.
Well, and
Yeah,
if
that go ahead, Vivian.
down, when we phased down, it went from like 200, 150, and then they're like, okay, no, everybody closed. So how do you go from 0 to 250 without kind of that phased in approach?
Right, and there is some confusion because there's discrepancy between like the Move Milwaukee Forward plan, the announcement yesterday, and even Michelle Battles is pointing out right now in our comments. So make sure that you read Michelle's comment and her link, because this is what's unclear. That order number 3 that was issued yesterday, it doesn't all, it's not so straightforward. For gatherings, the capacity appears to be the lesser of 250, 25% of capacity or 30 square feet per person. This is where people are getting confused because certain orders and certain documents don't match others. So stay educated, people. As they say, we're in this together. We got to lean on each other and figure it out. Let's talk about, ladies, I appreciate your insight about that. It's going to be still playing itself out. Let's talk about, so of course, very important right now, our peaceful protests, talk of white privilege, all important topics that are at the top of everyone's mind. I hope at the top of everyone's mind, it should be. But I think it's important that people hear from, us because we're together. But part of what I know to be true is that conversation is critical. And it's powerful, and it's a tool that we can use to better understand each other, to better connect with each other, and most importantly, to better support one another. So I'm interested, how we can start with you, Vivian. How are you guys feeling? This has been a very up and down couple of weeks as it relates to the discussions around protests and racism and segregation. How are you feeling?
It's a tough time, and there's a part of me that feels a little drained, and there's a part of me that some days I don't want to talk about it, and so I'm glad I live by myself because I don't have to talk to anybody when I don't feel like it. And it's just really tough, and you do want to do something. With COVID-19 and social distancing, I don't know that I want to be out, in the streets protesting. But I did lead the Kneel for Nine protest at my park in my neighborhood. And so I had masks, and, I encouraged people to wear masks. And then when we were out there, to social distance, and there were probably a good, like, at least 60 people or more, 60 to 75 people that came, family members. They social distanced, and we knelt for 9 minutes and shared some conversation. But everybody was respectful. Everybody had on a mask. Everybody, recognized the distance, and they were happy that I reached out to Neil for Nine and said, "Hey, can we put Gordon Park on here?" And they said, "Of course."
Right.
And neighbors were like, "Thank you," because we wanted to do something and we really just didn't know what to do. And so while
Mm-hmm.
we were really on the corner of Humboldt and East Locust, people were driving past, honking, and just really showing the support for this effort. And so now, a lot of people have said, okay, now that we've knelt, now what?
Right.
Well, basically saying these people who are out here mad need to translate that into action. They need to make sure that they are registered to vote. They need to make sure that they not only vote in the presidential election, but all of the other elections, because our municipal leaders are a part of this, our municipal judges. I mean, we need to have people support and communicate and exercise their voice on every level, local,
Yeah.
state, and federal. And so I hope this is, just an exercise that galvanizes galvanizes young people, even if, since many of them supported Bernie, even if Bernie is not on the ticket, that they know that their voice does matter and that their voice and vote do count.
Yeah, I think the voting aspect of the conversation is so, so critical. I'm so glad that you brought that up. I really haven't heard a lot of people mention that in this conversation, so I really, really think that that's so key. And Reina, a lot of people, this is really all about demanding systematic change. And for me, I'm wondering, from your perspective, what does that change look like to you?
Mm. I'm so glad you asked that. And so, for me, even prior to COVID-19, I would work with different community groups to facilitate a conversation around the racial wealth gap simulation, where me being on the front line, specifically of social service, with the service being food security, the way that we feed diverse communities cannot be a one size fits all. And knowing the history on how we got here is just as important as having the conversation. When you opened up to ask this question, you talked about white privilege. I think there is a reconciling and an acknowledgement that that does exist. But what I find we also bump up against is white guilt and also white fragility. And so to have the conversation, there has to be an openness and an acknowledgement that this even exists. And I
Right.
see that during these times, it's prime for us to have those conversations, yet it's very challenging. A number of folks want to start book clubs and read like the new Jim Crow, and that's not going to carry the day. What's been institutional is going to require a real expert and a real unbridling of the entire team from the top down to be open to this conversation regardless of how uncomfortable it is. And unfortunately, at a number of organizations, I don't think we're there yet, but I think we've made more progress than we have in a very long time.
Yeah, I definitely can see progress. Do you think that we are making strides towards justice with all this conversation and protests that are happening? How do you feel about that?
So, anyone who follows me on social media, I think protesting is absolutely necessary. And as it relates specifically to George Floyd and the number of African American men who have been killed at the hands of police, I think it's important to make the point that it's no longer acceptable. It's never been acceptable, but we will not stand for another Black body or anybody to be murdered, really, and to there not be justice brought to it. I think that's an important part, and that's the justice piece. But I also think that there is an opportunity to seize this moment to look at the systemic injustices. And so I think what's happening to George Floyd is a symptom of a systematic issue. So it's almost like if I have a cold and I take NyQuil, like that's treating that part, but
Right.
this whole other part of the snake that we have to deal with. And so I think
Right.
that's the opportunity. And I really wish that there were more leaders that I would like us to come together as an entire city, from the elected officials, from our governing officers, to our foundations, to our nonprofits, to the folks in the neighborhood, to have that conversation, to co-create, and then have pieces of accountability. I don't think that's happening, but in the space of George Floyd, at least that piece of injustice is being talked about and is being moved on.
Yeah, and Vivian, I don't know if you saw, I think it was maybe yesterday, I was noticing this on the news too, but there's this huge mural going up. I think it might be kind of near you, or
Is that
somewhere
River
over on
West?
Colton, yeah, in River West, on a side of a building that a gentleman owns, and all these local artists are coming together to be a part of it and to create their artwork. So, it's a huge mural of George Floyd. It makes a big statement. It's at an important place in our city in terms of neighborhood. Do you think that we are able to use this to help change, have the power to change history?
Absolutely. I think this time will go down in history as a monumental time of change. And you mentioned the mural, and Raina mentioned, people coming to the table and talking. And we need to let people be themselves. and
Right.
play the role that they want to play. Um, not everybody is the go out and protest. Some people need to write letters and they
Right.
are good writers. And so they need to be the ones to write the letters that we need written to legislators and lawmakers. Others show expression with art. And so for people who are very visual and this keeps uh, a particular topic on their minds, that is what they do. And so we all have gifts. We
Right.
need to use them in different ways and not judge somebody for not doing it the way you want to do it or the way you think it should be done, but let them play a role and then we all
I think Raina's having a little bit of trouble,
oh no.
but she'll be back. I agree, and I'm curious, Vivian. Just one last thing related to this. It sounds like that you are feeling hopeful that we're coming a little bit more together as a community. Is hope in your spirit right now?
Hope is always in my spirit, and not to get all religious on you, but every time I wake up I am here to do something. God wants to use me to do something. A year and a half ago, I was able to sit down and write my book. Five more than now, almost 7 years ago, I survived my stroke because God wanted me to do something. He wanted
Yeah.
me to be on this earth. And so, anytime you wake up in the morning and you can get up, you can think, you can walk, you can talk, even if you can't walk, you can roll to the phone, call somebody. You know what I'm saying? If
I
you
hear you.
you
I
something.
I
So
give you an amen to that. You can do something. That is so great. Raina's back, and I just want to ask her one question before we move on to your story, Vivian, in the book. So I'm gonna bring her back. But one of the things that, hey, Raina, thanks for hanging in there with us. Can you hear us?
I can hear you just well. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
perfect.
good.
So I wanted to ask you, Vivian and I were having a continuing on that conversation, but you have such a beautiful son, Julian. There you guys are. So cute. I just adore him. Um, so what are you in this conversation, with a young son? Are you worried? Is there things that make you fearful as a mom? Are you hopeful as a mom? What are you feeling in your role as a mom?
Yeah, that's such a personal question, David, and I have no issues with answering that. But as a mother to a young Black son, like I think the conversations that I'm having, like I said, that Julian's just right next door playing with his neighbor, who is a young white boy, and speaking to his mom, they don't have to have the same conversations with their son about how to act in public and how to be. And so, although he's 2 years old, there are so many people, so many parents that look like me who have to have that conversation at a very young age. And when all I want is for my little boy to experience that Black boy joy to the day that he dies, hopefully not prematurely. So I'm more motivated than ever to look for opportunities to create a safer environment that is based on inclusion, that is welcoming, that's loving, that's accepting, regardless of his skin color. And so I think the necessity to have those conversations are very real. But I'd like to I want to work towards a community in a way of being that doesn't require that at all.
I just adore both of you. I'm so happy that we had this part of our conversation. It's important, it's special, and I know that people that are listening are grateful as well. So thanks for being open and honest about this. I really appreciate that. And now we get to talk about some things that are also, exciting. Of course, we're going to move on and talk about your stories, your books. I'm going to start with Vivian's amazing book. And Rayna, we're going to see you in a few minutes, my dear. So we'll be right back.
bye, Raina.
Oh my gosh, this is already so fun for a Friday. Um, Dana said to Rayna, I just want to say, great insight on answering that question about her son, Julian. I mean, very eloquent and so true. And I really appreciate her openness around that too. So my friend Vivian, I have wanted to talk to you about not only this book, but so many things for so long. And when this opportunity came up, I was so happy you said yes.
Oh, of course I would say yes, because I've been watching you and just, enjoying your conversations with everybody. Sometimes I've commented, so it's been great.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that you wanted to talk to me.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. So, before we start about the book and about your health scare, having a stroke, let's talk a little bit more about kind of your background and history. When I was growing up in Milwaukee, I lived in Milwaukee my whole life. And when I was growing up in Milwaukee, when I really first, saw Vivian King was like many people on the news and at today's TMJ4. And so that was kind of like, without knowing you as a person, that's when I first saw you. So, now knowing you for so many years through lots of different things and being friends, it's kind of interesting to think that that's when I first saw you. But what brought you to Milwaukee?
So television brought me to Milwaukee. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and went to the University of Missouri Columbia, the oldest journalism school in the country, and we like to say the best. But my friends at Northwestern and Columbia will fight me over that. But whatever, we're always in the top. And went to journalism school and studied broadcast journalism. And so I actually left college and I worked my way up. I went from small markets to larger markets. So I was in Alexandria, Louisiana, the central part of Louisiana. I went to Tyler, Texas. I was in Battle Creek, Michigan. And then I moved to Milwaukee and in 95 and started working as the education reporter at Channel 4. And so it's interesting because my dad, may he rest in peace, was an educator in St. Louis. And so I thought, that's kind of how I sold myself on being the education reporter because I said I've grown up listening to stories of education, and so of course I can report on it. And so that's what brought me to Milwaukee.
Wow.
And Lanice Weeks, may she rest in peace.
Yes.
Went to Mizzou. I was in undergrad, and she was in grad. She was in grad doing graduate school, and so that's how we met at Mizzou. And then she was actually in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and recommended me for a job there. And then when she moved to Milwaukee, they were looking for an education reporter, and she said, I have just the person, and called me. So she had always,
Wow.
the next job is on you, Vivian. So I live up to that. But came
even
here.
even when you got out of TV, you kind of stayed in the PR field in your careers and your journey at Roundy's food market and also at Aurora Healthcare, right? Always kind of the PR branding experience.
Right. I never even thought that I was going to leave TV, and then got this opportunity, was recommended for a position there, and had a conversation with Bob Mariano, and he just made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And so I said, oh, I guess I'm leaving TV. And if I don't like it, in a year, then I'll just try to get back into TV. And but I liked it. I stayed in Roundy's for 8 years, and then
Yeah.
got the opportunity to go to Aurora because, again, they reached out saying, we like what you've been doing with community relations, and we want you to head community relations at Aurora. And so I've always been the type of person that I don't really look back. If I get an opportunity, I seize it, because I really think that, even before my stroke, I really think that God prepares you for like the next thing. And so I had skills that would translate into doing the job at Roundy's and then doing the job at Aurora Healthcare. So, and then now writing a book.
Yes, that's so cool. So that leads us up to the book, which I have here. We're going to talk about the book in a lot because this is just, I got it 2 days ago, my first copy. Yay. And there's so much good information in here that I can't wait to talk about it. But you mentioned Aurora, and that really leads to the time in your life where you had the stroke. And that is where so much of what we're hearing about the book and you comes from. And I think you really worked for Aurora for only like 4 months when the stroke actually happened. Is that
Yeah,
true?
you just
Yeah.
like 3 months, like
Yeah.
almost 4 months, because it was October 25th, 2013, a Friday morning, when I woke up, lamented that I had to go to a Girl Scouts breakfast, not because I disliked the Girl Scouts, but because it was a Friday morning and I was tired and I thought, oh, 7:30. But my friend Sadna Linval invited
Yeah.
me. I did not want to disappoint her. And so I said, let me get up and go. And boy, am I glad I did. I got
Yeah.
up, I left without my makeup on, and I kind of talk about how I've always wanted to look good, make a difference, and so going someplace without my makeup is
This is how
not.
Vivian always looks. Hey, girl. Hey.
That
Love
was
that.
Easter Sunday, and we were doing Zoom church by then. But
I
I said I
love
need
it.
up for Easter. So I left, but usually I will put my makeup on in the car at stoplights. And if I don't finish on my way, then once I get to my destination, I'll put it on in the car really quickly and then go in. Well, something obviously I started having the episode while I was driving, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But
Right.
I just got out of the car, walked into the hotel, walked into the ballroom. People were saying hi to me. I went to my table. People were asking, do I feel okay? And I felt that I felt okay.
Right.
They said, maybe you need to eat something. I took one bite of sausage, and that's the last thing I clearly remember for 10 days. I
Wow.
I had a seizure. They called 911. They rushed me to Aurora Sinai, which ironically is where my office was at the time. I was there for about an hour, and then they rushed me to St. Luke's because St. Luke's specializes in stroke care. And I
Right.
was in neurological ICU for 10 days and in the hospital for a total of 32 days. So 20
Right.
I was in the hospital. And I don't have high blood pressure. I still don't. I don't have history of stroke in my family. I'm relatively active. I don't have diabetes or any of these issues. Doctors told me, I found out on the last day of my stay in the hospital, that birth control pills over the age of 40 is what caused the blood clot on the left side of my brain over the part that manages your speech. It bled out. I could not talk because of that. It killed all those brain cells. I couldn't talk for 3.5 weeks, and that's how I came up with the book title of the book, When the Words Suddenly Stopped Finding My Voice Again After a Massive Stroke.
Right. Oh my gosh. I mean, the story of that is just, it's riveting, truly. And one of the things about the book that was interesting to me is, you know, knowing it was kind of the first time I read a book about somebody that I know, like a story about a person that I know. And I have to say, it was kind of difficult at times because, not that I know you on a super personal level, but I know you as a person. And I was like having trouble. I was like, oh no, it was really hard. And parts of the book were difficult, especially I think it was Joan trying to reach your parents and making those phone calls and involving the police. I was like just having such a hard time reading that. And it's so well written, but oh my gosh. Now, you mentioned this earlier. From as early as I can remember, I have wanted to have fun, make a difference, and look good while doing it. That's something that you've always mentioned. So, what was it like after those times in the hospital, going through rehabilitation? And, were you aware that you weren't your normal self? I'm sure by that point you were.
I was aware that I was not my normal self, although I didn't really know what my normal self was. So
Mm,
people always ask me, that must have been so frustrating because you talk for a living, you have to be engaged with people. And so I did not even think that, I didn't think of the irony of that, if you will. I knew I
right.
could talk, but I didn't once think I have to get back to my broadcasting, or, I have to get back to my job. I didn't even really think that in the beginning. And so it wasn't frustrating for me in that sense. Um, but I just didn't think that, yeah, I just was there. I knew
Right.
that people were helping me, and I didn't even realize I had had a stroke in the beginning. And
Wow.
so I just, remember waking up and, being in the hospital. Every time my friends or mom came, the people who were my core people around me, I knew them, but I didn't once think of what who I used to be, or anything. Not definitely not in the beginning. As
Right.
I started talking, then I was healing, and so then I became aware of who I was and what I used to be. But in the beginning,
Right.
yeah, it's almost like, okay, you need to sit here and heal for a minute, and that's what I did.
Right. And one of the things that you just mentioned and talk so greatly about in the book too is the importance of faith, family, and friends. And I think you call it your core team or posse.
My posse.
And yes, the posse. And there was something that I just read like 5 times. I'm going to read it now because I was like envisioning this happening and I love this. This was one of your friends, I think, talking. We told the ICU nurse, we gave her the names of our sisters. Then she started looking like, none of y'all look alike. I love that.
they they said they were just like, we dare her to say something. It was funny.
That was so cool. So tell us a little bit more. Like, how did that help as a part of your healing process, that posse?
So yeah, I mean, my three P's. I'm like, my posse. When I sat down to look at what really got me through this, my posse, persistence, and prayer. And so
Mm,
my posse was just there in the beginning. Once people, once they learned about the situation, they're like, we've got to call her parents. We've got to get the information. We've got to advocate for her so that when we do get her mom here, we can relay what's been going on. They could, listen and basically advocate for me. And they were there to make decisions until my mom could get there to make decisions. And so they were very protective of that. And they just wanted to make sure that I was cared for. They kind of figured I would be because I worked for Aurora, etc. But
yeah.
Aurora takes care of everybody. But they really wanted to make sure that I had the best care, that I wasn't bothered. And then the doctors were saying, we need for you to limit the visitors because her brain cannot be overstimulated. And while it's healing, we need it to heal. And while it's healing, we don't need her to try to figure out who is coming to see her.
Right.
So many people wanted to come to see me, and I thank them for wanting to come to see me. And some were my, really great friends. Like, I saw you put a picture of me with Katrina and Susan and Kim, and they were just like, what do you mean we can't come in? Because by then
Right.
my sorority sisters were like, nope, you cannot come in. We're sorry. And
That's not good.
and even one of my best friends, Jose Sanders, who wrote the foreword, they wouldn't let him come either. And so, people were a little upset in the beginning. But then, once I talked to them afterwards, I said, hey, that wasn't my decision. I would have probably
Right.
let but I wasn't the doctor. I wasn't my care team. I didn't even know what was happening. so
Yeah.
so it was, they were very protective, and that's one reason I wrote this book as well, not only to get the dialogue out there about the relationship between birth control pills and stroke, but to thank the countless people who were there for me, not just my posse at the hospital, but a lot of my good friends who have been I've lived in different places, and so they're like, well, we were your posse at this time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
They found out on Facebook that something was wrong. And so,
It's
when I could finally talk, my mother told me, hey, people are asking about you and people are posting on Facebook. So I was able to see how many people were praying for me and how
mm,
many positive thoughts were out there. So this was really kind of a thank you to everybody who I think had a role in my healing. And those people
yeah.
there in the hospital, they said prayers. And then that last one, persistence, is me trying to do exactly what the therapist told me to do so that I could get better and get back to a normal state. And I'm just, thank God, I am normal again. I'm not on any medications. I take baby aspirin just to make
Uh-huh.
sure, to keep my blood from clotting, and vitamins and stuff like that. But I am back to normal, and I
There's
people.
that's one of the things that when I was watching your recovery, and especially now and most recently, people, there were so many prayer angels. I loved that part in the book where it said that, I can't remember who with your mom, but every time they showed up, they went right to the chapel and prayed for like 50 minutes, like real people pray. And I was like, I love that. So you definitely were prayed through in so many ways. And now because this is how I know you, like this, like, riding with a
Right.
smile. I mean, there's no way Vivian's going to be held back. So my prayer was that, that you came back, because this is why your energy and your enthusiasm, your spirit, your love, the way that you connect with people. I mean, we couldn't have not had that again. So it was just such a pleasure to know that this is how it turned out and that there's so much more to come. And you were just on GMA #1 bestseller on Amazon.
Like, praise God, right? So a lot of people have said, gosh, we were so worried about you because when the pandemic hit, you couldn't do your regular launches and you couldn't do your book launch, and we just felt so badly for you. And then my good friend Jose Sanders pitched the story to Robin Roberts because they are very friendly, because he used to do the morning show at ABC 7 in Chicago. And so
Yes.
he sent her my information. She said she would pass it along to her producer. Her producer called me that day. I was sitting at this computer and, working on something. And all of a sudden, you get the notification that you have an email.
Yes.
And I'm like, it said GMA, and I thought, oh my! And so I didn't call back right away. I waited. I didn't want to appear too eager.
Yes. Yes.
I waited for about 30 minutes and called back, and she was really interested in my story. And originally, I was supposed to, they were going to do the story that everybody saw and then come out to me live. But then they decided that no, we don't really have enough time that particular time. I was thinking, what? You've got 2 hours. But anyway, they said we don't really have time for that, and what we're going to do is actually talk to a doctor after your story, so and then have some questions from the audience. So I said, okay, the story is still on, and I was just really thrilled that Robin, I sent her and her producer a book, and Robin really liked it, and said on national TV that it was beautiful and that it was really something, and told everybody to go on Amazon and get it. And so
And
after
they
all of,
did.
then I became #1 on Amazon. And
Yay, Vivian.
who
That was
needed launch, right?
I mean, that's what I love. I mean, Vivian, okay, a book launch, whatever. You know, you got to go bigger. That's what you do. And so I was so excited to see that. And when I started seeing the number ones showing up in, I think, more than one category, I was
Yes.
so delighted for you. That was so awesome. Now, there's the book for everyone watching to make sure that you pick up a copy. There's one thing that I want to make sure we get in here because I was so struck by this in the book, and it was something that you included a Bible verse, and it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation." Sorry, I just lost my spot. I want to get rid of this first. All right, start over. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, put prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And I thought that that was such a great part of the book for people to understand. And I love that you included some of those Bible verses to really kind of show how your faith is so demonstrated in your journey.
Well, because David, it's like, you know, the sun shines on all of us, good people and not so good people. It rains on all of us. And so God doesn't say we're going to have a perfect life. But if we seek Him, we will have perfect peace. So even when I ask God for things, it's either yes, it's either not yet, or maybe later. But a no is I have something better for you.
Better for you.
And
I
so, no, I couldn't have the book launch at Boswell, but yes, I could have an interview with Robin Roberts on Good
yes.
America.
Yes, because he had something better for you. I
And I
love that.
because Boswell has just been so great. And, my book is there. And, I appreciate having my book there because you can buy it and support a local business. And he had made it very easy for people to get it. He has curbside pickup. In the beginning, he had delivery for free, in the very beginning. Now I think you do have to pay for that, but we're all going through something, right? And so
Yeah.
I just was very grateful that he was still there and said, I'll support you no matter what. But yeah, when you just petition God, He will give, even if it's something you don't want to know. You're okay with it. I remember saying, oh, I don't feel like going to work this particular day, or I don't feel like having a conversation at work that I needed. And every time I talk to God in the morning, it's like the day goes by fine. It's like I'm okay. I get through that day.
Yeah.
And he just gives me a peace. And so when you asked if I'm hopeful, during this time of our pandemic, I am hopeful because now I definitely pray every day and make sure I'm asking him and seeking him for answers. And then I look at, my ancestors, because I did 23andMe a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like 89.9% West African. I don't know what tribe, but if I came from some strong stock, right? If my ancestors made that trip on that boat to America and then through slavery and everything, and I am still here, there is something in me that is strong. And so that alone, I didn't have to go through that. My ancestors went through that, and I am still here. So, I just seek God and say, direct my path. And it may have taken me a little longer than some people to figure that out. But now that I know it, that's what I do.
That's what you do. And you do it so well. And we are so glad that you share our blessings with all of us. We are all better for having you a part of our lives and certainly our community. And one reason why I'm so glad about the book is because now so many more people get to know the fabulous Vivian King through just a delightful presentation of a part of your story that is so inspiring and so insightful. It's going to be so helpful. The resources in the back I thought were just really, really important. And we're glad you're here because as the last sentence in the book before acknowledgements start says, you can never really know when the words will suddenly stop. So that's why I love having you, Vivian, because I wanted to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed the book too.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. So we're gonna see you in just a little bit. I'm gonna talk to Rayna, but thank you. This was so delightful and I really appreciate it. I know people are gonna love this book so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right, stay tuned. And now, oh my gosh, two women that I just love. So I can't wait to continue this conversation. You met her earlier in the broadcast. Rayna Andrews is back. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, I absolutely love Vivian. I was just so enveloped in what she was saying. It's like she's like she is my celebrity. I love
I
it.
know. She's so great. She is so great. And so are you. So I'm equally, oh, wait a second. I gotta get you back. Uh-oh, Rayna, guess what? Hold on. Rayna's gonna come back because I made a mistake. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Hold on, guys. I pushed the wrong button. No worries. She's on her way back in here. So just hold tight 1 second. But let me just let you know about Rayna's book while she's joining us. This is Alex McGreen, The Tale of the Mysterious Kale. This is such a fun kids book. The illustrations are outstanding. They are absolutely incredible. The story is even better, which is so cool. There's so many great things to talk about in the book. As soon as Rayna gets back here, we're going to chat with her. So please bear with me. You saw Rayna's cute son, Julian, earlier. And I know that there's probably a little inspiration about being a mom that came from this book. We're going to see from Rayna about what her involvement as the Director of Community Engagement at Feeding America, Eastern Wisconsin, is all about. And she is also the founder of the Healthy Food Movement and a public food ambassador. Okay, perfect. Hold on. She's here. Rayna, I can't even say I'm sorry enough. I totally pushed the wrong button. I don't even have my Friday cocktail yet, but thanks for hanging in there with me. Uh-oh, now I can't hear you. Hold on. You know what, Rayna? Hold on 1 second. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. I'm gonna need you to log out and log back in because I can't hear you. This is the fun part. Hold on, hold on. Hey, Vivian, since you're there, I'm gonna bring you in here for a second to help me through this. Oh my God. Let me
Okay.
just see if we can hear her. Oh, Rayna, I can hear you. Yay!
Good.
I'm sorry about that. We're just having fun with technology. Okay, so here we are, the Reina Andrews that we've all been waiting for. I showed while you were gone the fabulous book. So much fun. We're going to talk about this in a second. But I first want to know about your involvement as the Director of Community Engagement for Feeding America, Eastern Wisconsin. Now, during the COVID-19, I've been really fascinated by some of the things that your group has been doing, including, I think you've been calling them the drive-through mobile food pantry. How have you guys been serving the community?
Yes. So with COVID-19, we've completely had to do a significant pivot with the way that we service the community. Feeding America Eastern Wisconsin as a food bank is very different from a food pantry, hot meal program, or shelter. Those organizations come to our food bank for food resources. And so that people know we're not just in the greater Milwaukee area, we take care of households across the 36 counties of Eastern Wisconsin, which is significant. And so these drive-through mobile pantries are our way of still servicing community with our partners, but using a contactless pickup. And so we have the boxes already prepared with your meat, dairy, produce, and it has to be refrigerated. And so there's sensitivity there. But communities in need, they pull up, pop their trunk, and we just allow them to take off. Much of what Feeding America has done, because we've been independent or private in a way that most of our food comes from manufacturers, wholesalers, and distributors, and very little comes from government. We have that flexibility to operate on the honor system. So if you're in need, like people are being furloughed, people are being laid off all of a sudden between now and the time that they get their food stamps or food share, we want to honor that and serve them with dignity. And so if you need it, we're here for you.
Wow, serving with dignity. I mean, that's so critical during this time in the community and people that you serve. And now recently there was something that I saw too that you had posted about with the bucks and local restaurants. This was huge, like 10,000 pounds of food from the Fiserv Forum, right?
Yes, yes. It was a total of 4 truckloads, which is
Wow.
significant. And so Arvin, who works for the Bucks Foundation, who serves on our board, was like, "Hey, we have all of this commercial grade food that hasn't been used, seeing that the season is basically canceled. We need to move it. Can you find a home for it?" And seeing that Caitlin was operating as a social enterprise, they were receiving food from us specifically for their community meals that they and their network of restaurant groups, restaurateurs were using. It just totally made sense for them to use this commercial grade. I mean, you can't give a family of 3 or a family of 4 a 20-pound
Right.
bag of chicken, but they can certainly make several meals out of that for people who needed it.
Yeah.
So, as the senior director of community engagement and impact, being able to kind of know what's going on in community and connect the resources, I think that was one of my most proud moments for our organization.
Yeah, that was fascinating. And I know that that made a big, big difference for a lot of people. Really, really neat to see that. One of the things I love about you as a person is just the layers to who you are and what makes you up, which I think is so fantastic. So, the healthy food movement
Mhm.
is a passion of yours as a public health ambassador. What is the healthy food movement all about? Tell us about the kind of philosophy of it.
The healthy food movement is a framework to get young people interested in the source of their food. And so we teach them about movement. We teach them about where food comes from. We teach them about how to eat to live and the foods that bring vitality to our bodies so that young people have a healthy connection to the source of their food and why it's important for us to eat it. If I may, the reason why I wrote this book is that at our food bank we do a lot of community engagement, working with healthcare organizations. And so as I would be staffing tables where we would distribute food to people in need, specifically around the time that there was a lot of lead awareness in the community in our water, I was pushing the message to eat healthier, to eat dark leafy vegetables to draw out toxins in our body. Well, what I've learned and what I observed is that a number of our older adults, our more mature, seasoned adults, would get the fruits and vegetables that they're familiar with. But when it came to our spinach and kale and broccoli, they weren't having it. But as soon as I
Right.
brought out the blender and started doing cooking demonstrations, I saw that the children that were there with their parents and their grandparents would be very curious. And so what I realized is that it may be a challenge to get grown adults to change their eating habits and health norms unless they have a health scare now. But we can start anew with our next generation, with my son's generation.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is so cool about some items that you posted, one, I love this. If you don't come from a healthy family, make sure a healthy family comes from you. And
Yeah.
that is a lot about what you educate people about through this movement, right?
Yes, yes. It's a lot about personal and social responsibility. So with the healthy food movement, we say that food insecurity is a public health concern. It's not a them versus us, it is an us, because we are a part of this system and we need all of us to work. And so regardless of what your upbringing was or what your parents' upbringing was, it's important that with you, that you make a stand and make a commitment for a healthier outcome for you and your family.
Yeah, I think that's so critical. And how does food and what you eat and what your consumption of food is relate to mental health?
Absolutely. So there have been a number of studies that connect a young person's cognitive development to their contributions to society. For example, when a child goes to school and they're food insecure, which means that they only rely on the school's breakfast and lunch, however, they skip dinner. If that child isn't properly being nourished, by the time they come back to school, even if they eat breakfast, their minds won't wake up because they're just being activated by breakfast until lunchtime. So really, if you only spend a half of your day in school and you're only getting a half of that, no wonder our outcomes are the way that they are, especially in our schools of lower income populations where our children are really relying on that free breakfast and free lunch.
Yeah, that is really, really a good point. I think that the connection to that, and especially to youth, is huge. I
Mhm.
love this too, something I saw on your page. Your mood depends on the food you eat. And I know as I get older as a person, I really am realizing that more and more. So if it can be something that young people learn at an early age and carry that with them for their lifetime, I mean, people's mood and mental health can have a serious improvement, like you said, by
Yes.
just eating the right things.
Yeah.
And another thing I want to talk about quickly before getting more into the book is your TEDx talk. This is one thing about you and your public speaking and lots of things you do in the community. But what was this experience like for you?
Oh my gosh. So this doing a TEDx at UWM was absolutely life changing. I consider myself a really relatively good public speaker, but you can't just get up to a TEDx and just start rattling things off. It has to be very personal. And so that 9 week curation process was like, go deeper, go deeper. And so that 9 weeks of peeling back the layers of what I didn't realize I kind of covered up about my upbringing just
Yeah.
completely came to light. And on that stage, I was just completely naked and very vulnerable with who I was. But I attribute that experience in that TEDx for the work that I do now because it made it even more important of why it cemented why I'm such a stand for food security, for household stability, that we eat to live and that we know the difference. And I realized that I just didn't know what I know, but now that I know, I can't unknow. So let me help other people have this awakening to cause better outcomes for their life.
I love that. Now that I know, I can't unknow, so I have to help other people. I mean, that's on a billboard somewhere, please. Okay, the book. This is so great. I got my copy. Thank you so much. I
Yes.
had it inscribed for my young neighbors, and I appreciate you doing that because after the broadcast, I'm going to make sure this gets delivered to them because I know they're going to love it. But it was interesting. I got the book. And in reading it, I was like, wow, this is so insightful. And there's so much information in I mean, it's not, 100 pages.
Yeah.
So the information that's in the book is so captured in a way that there are really, really powerful lessons. And it's not just about kale. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but this all started about lead in the pipes at Sunnyview Elementary, right?
Yes.
And then how were these characters developed? That was something I wanted to know too. And there she is behind you.
Yeah, this is Alex McGreen. So this book is very much inspired by real life events. So at the time that I wrote this, I was the founding board chair of Milwaukee Excellence Charter School. Shout out to Milwaukee Excellence and Maurice Thomas, who is the principal there. But we, as board chair, we were dealing with an issue of lead being in our water system where we had to send notes home and things like that. And so I wanted to tell a story in such a way that a young girl of color could be represented as the protagonist and really take charge and and take the health and well-being of her classmates into her own hands. And so in 32 pages or less, I really wanted to use this as an opportunity for young people to see that they can cause a movement at any age. The importance of considering the health and well-being of your neighbors, and to say that science and food can be really fun. And so
Yeah.
that's all captured here, and also cooking with family.
That's it. You know, I wanted to bring up the family piece. It was so great that the story of the family and grandpa's elixir and how that all, you know, made the kale grow so big, and the connection with her mom and her grandpa. I mean, that was really part of the story that I thought was just fabulous. The other part that I loved is how you then brought in the concept of sharing, you know, passing it on, putting the blessings forward and sharing with neighbors and friends the food that they created, the shakes, the recipes, the treats, the cookies, all of that. I just think the lessons are so fascinating. Was that all things that you came up with because of how you wanted people to receive the book, or things that were just a part of your spirit?
All the above. And so with Alex McGreen and the Tale of the Mysterious Kale, a lot of it pulls from my own personal experiences. And as I did my book tour, people were asking, "Are you Alex McGreen? Is this you?" And I would say a lot of Alex is in me and vice versa. And so I thought that having a young girl with big curly hair and that kind of looks like me, it was important that anyone who saw this could see themselves in Alex, and it be a lesson of character development, that it's not just about you, and how important as people and citizens of this earth that we look out for one another.
I just think that's great. And you know, for any kid, any child, any classroom, any house, for birthday presents, Christmas presents, whatever it is, this book needs to end up in the gift, in the classroom, in the office, in the whatever, because it really is filled with lessons about family, food, community, sharing, being respectful, honoring one another. I just think that's fabulous. And then we got to give a shout out to your illustrator as well. I
Yes.
think Brian, what is his last name?
Brian
Brian Baz-
Bazwak. You know what? I forever call him Brian B, because it's like
I know.
I'm never going to be able to pronounce this. You know, if we can, I have a really quick story about how Brian and I came to be. Is that I
Please.
was working with a local marketing firm, and I already secured an illustrator out of state. You know, I wasn't thinking about that. And the marketing company said, "Hey, you know, we love this story that we're working on, and I have my graphic designer who really likes your story and loves writing. You know, would you give him a chance?" I said, "Well, show me some of his samples." And I fell in love with Brian.
Yeah.
Everything was virtual, and we did not meet until our first NPR interview after the book was launched. So everything was done virtually,
Oh,
but yet he lives
wow.
in Waukesha. Okay. And so this
Oh,
book was 100% done locally. Our printing was in Menominee Falls. And so I was really happy to make that invest in our local community.
I just love, I mean, the illustrations and the people are just so cool.
Yeah.
You got to get this. I
Yeah.
am so happy for you. And really, just from everything that you do with your time at Feeding America, your conversation with TEDx, and how that lives on YouTube and is able to inspire people beyond being on stage there. The book, of course, your role as a mom and a person in our community. We are so grateful for every role that you play. And it's been
Thank you.
so much fun chatting with you.
Thank you.
So much fun. Let's bring Vivian back so we can all just wish each other a happy Friday uh, as we start our weekend, because I hear it's going to be kind of nice. Now, Vivian, don't you love this book too?
I was going to say, I need to get that book because no, I don't have children. However, I often read at elementary schools, and I have some of my favorite books that I like to read. And so I definitely need a local book by a local
Absolutely.
author. So I must get it.
Good. Well, ladies, I really appreciate your time today. It really means a lot to me that you took the time for DC Live. I think that both of you are just, I mean, good peeps. And that's what it's about right now. You know, talking to each other, having conversation, spreading the joy, finding hope, learning from each other, hearing about our stories, and inspiring everybody that listens. So I couldn't have asked for two better people to do that.
Well, I hope you feel the love right back, because that's how I feel about you, David. And I hope you always know that that is the case.
I was definitely honored when you asked, so thank you, David.
Of course, my pleasure. So thanks, ladies. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
All right, be well, and we hope to see you very soon. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Oh gosh, I just loved spending my Friday with both of them. Such a great way to end the week. I know that many people had a great time. Mickey, thank you. I just love those ladies. Thank you, Vivian and Rayna, for your time. Great hearing from you both, says Mickey. Thank you for joining us. So this has been another fun week of DC Live. And again, I'm really grateful for how well it's been received and that people are finding some joy and light in these conversations during what's been a couple of rough weeks. So I really appreciate everybody tuning in. I will let you know what's happening next week. I'm waiting on a couple of things. So for now, enjoy the weekend, be safe, be well, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much. DC Live is done for week number 3. Bye-bye.